everyone, this is Garen. Welcome back to the Black Zombie YouTube channel, where we talk about everything disc golf and more. This series of disc golf videos, we've been talking about the different flights of discs, whether it's stable, understable, hyzer, Anhyzer. And this one I'm going to talk about Anhyzer, specifically talking about Anhyzer shots. And when I talk about these shots, I don't want you to think I'm saying that you can't do these or there's not a place for some of these shots, but sometimes I get critical about what to watch for wind, like when you're throwing a certain shot that exposes the bottom of the disc or even the top of the plate to wind from right to left or whatnot. I'm simply trying to get you to think about the wind when you throw a shot, because that's how you craft the lines. There might be a technical shot you throw that you're using the exposing of wind underneath the plate or on top of the plate. So just keep that in mind when we talk about even like the hyzer shots or whatnot. But Anhyzer shot, one of my favorite shots that I've done, like even sidearm. We'll talk about sidearms another time. Let's talk about the backhand Anhyzer shot. So right hand backhand for me, since I'm right-handed, it's going to be like this. Just a little recap: flat, hyzer. We're going to talk about Anhyzer. I'm a right hand backhand, so I'm throwing right hand, top of the plate, bottom of the plate, or bottom of the disc, top of the flight plate here. Fingers under here, stabilizing the thumb. Anhyzer, the disc is going to be like this. That's how it's going to come out. When you release the disc, that's when you identify what kind of shot it is. Anhyzer, flat, or hyzer. In this case, a Anhyzer shot. So when you throw an Anhyzer shot, it's really going against what the disc wants to do. As we talked about before, the disc for a right hand backhand wants to ultimately turn left. Especially the more stable it is, the more it wants to turn to the left side. So if you're starting off with a Anhyzer at the release point, that's automatically already telling the disc like, hey, you're going to go right. But the more stable the disc is, the faster it's going to fight back and come back this way. So you oftentimes see players throw a more stable disc on a very big Anhyzer because they know that if they cut that wind and put a lot of spin on it, it'll fly for a while, and right as it gets to be, it slows down a little bit and gets to be in a stable position, it actually comes back in at the end and then turns left. So whether they're crafting a shot around a tree or something like that, a lot of people like to do that Anhyzer big shot just to get the distance. And when you get an Anhyzer shot, it's real important having nose down or nose up. Nose down Anhyzer big shots are important because having that nose down a little bit actually doesn't let that wind get underneath it and really blow the disc out. It kind of helps keep that disc down longer like this before it finally stabilizes and comes back. So one, you have the Anhyzer shot, backhand Anhyzer shot to throw like this. You can throw a big Annie, big shot. You'll see like Double G will throw it. It'll fly for forever really, and then finally comes back to get that shot and then digs in. You can throw a baby Annie, baby Anhyzer, where you're just giving a little bit of a Anhyzer just right out of the gate. So as soon as you release the disc, it's going to come a little bit Annie, which is nice, especially if, like for myself, I throw a Wraith or a flamethrower. If you throw it on a baby Annie, not thinking about the wind at this point as far as whether it's a limited amount of wind, but you throw on a baby Annie, it is a stable disc, so it wants to come back, but that little bit of Anhyzer gives it a chance to go further before it finds itself and stabilizes and comes back. So on an Anhyzer shot, you can either do a baby Annie to get more distance, or you want the big bombing distance, or another reason why you want to go high, you do your big Anhyzer. Now when you have a headwind, again, headwind's the same, tailwind's the same, like we talked about in other videos. Your headwind's going to destabilize, your tailwind's going to stabilize it, your right to left. It gets a little tricky on right to left and left to right. We'll go over that too. So if you have a headwind, say you have a 20-mile-an-hour headwind, and you throw a big Anhyzer, it's going to make it stay in that Anhyzer position longer, because remember, stability, a disc being stable wants to turn back left. But with that headwind, it holds it in its understable position longer. So if it's an understable enough disc, it's going to hold that disc down for that wind, and it's going to stay like this, possibly to where it hits the ground. That's actually where you get to a backhand roller. When you throw something very understable, especially into a headwind or some kind of wind, not a tailwind, but some kind of headwind, it's really going to hold that Anhyzer and sometimes even go more Anhyzer until it hits the ground and turns to a roller. Now, if you have a tailwind, the tailwind's going to destabilize it, right? I mean, it's going to stabilize it. So if you have a tailwind, it's going to stabilize it. So when I throw an Anhyzer like this, it's going to make it want to like come in faster. So keep in mind what kind of wind you have behind you. So you have a 20-mile-an-hour wind, you know that disc is going to want to come back more. So you may still get a more stable disc to make sure it comes back, but you may know your disc well enough, understable, you can still throw that Anhyzer, but you know that wind is stabilizing the disc, so you get that distance. And so if it is a more stable disc and you want to come back quicker, but you want to get over something, then you can throw it Anhyzer nose down. That wind's going to make it come back, so you know it's going to come back in. Some people will throw with a tailwind, they'll throw a bigger Anhyzer shot with an understable disc, knowing that it'll get more flight because it's going to go out further to the right before it gets a chance to stabilize because it's an understable disc. Now, talking about the right to left. Now, remember, one of the main reasons why I'm doing these videos, and I think this is where people maybe make the mistakes when they're playing disc golf, is they don't really think about the flight plate, the disc itself. So we know, a lot of us know headwind destabilizes, tailwind stabilizes, but when you're not thinking about the right to left as much, it really affects your disc. And if you don't make that higher percentage shot, or you go for the lower percentage shot, you really make that mistake a lot of times because the wind is right to left or left to right. So if you're throwing a backhand Anhyzer, right hand backhand Anhyzer, you have a right to left, what is it doing? It's pushing that flight plate down. So it's actually keeping it from being stable. It's not letting it come back up. So it can hold that position. So if you know your disc well enough, you can use that right to left to pin that wing down and go further. But what happens as soon as that does stabilize and comes up? What happens at the end of the flight? It pushes underneath here, underneath the disc, and it instantly dumps it. So when people throw that Anhyzer with a right to left, they'll throw it hard enough and long enough, knowing that, hey, I want to get as much distance as I can with that wind pushing this wing down before it comes out, because I know as soon as this happens, it's going to dump. Now, when you get a left to right and you're doing this, what are you doing? You're essentially exposing the bottom part of the disc. It's like a kite, basically, because the wind's going to push here and make it move. So if you're throwing an Anhyzer shot and you have the left to right wind, it's going to push that disc over and hold it longer in this position as well. So one pins it from this side and one pushes it from this side. So it's kind of similar where it stabilizes that first part of the flight. So if you do an Anhyzer shot, the wind is pushing here. If it's a very stable disc, it's still going to fight. It's going to be harder. It's going to fight and it's going to come back. But as soon as it comes back like this, what's it going to do? That wind's going to push the plate down and it's going to make it nosedive. So again, it holds it in the position longer this way, but at the end of the flight, you got to keep in mind that wind is going to like push it down and stabilize the very end of the flight. Well, that's the Anhyzer shots. I'll get more details. I really like talking about the wind, the angles, disc types, and you can't really put it in one video. But I want to start putting these videos out there. If you have any questions, please put some notes in the comments and let me know what you think, what other things you want me to talk about. I can talk about different type of discs. I'm going to go out to the field and throw some understable discs from different companies, and we'll see how those fly. So I can do some reviews on what I think about the discs. So that's it. So when you have the Anhyzer shot with the left to right, just keep that in mind. You're showing the belly of the disc there, and know what's going to happen at the end. The reason why I do these videos is because I want you to really think about the wind out there when you throw these shots. Like I said, we know headwind, tailwind more so. We're kind of learning those as we go, but left to right gets a little bit tricky. And of course, again, then you get swirling winds and whatnot. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know what kind of questions you have. Leave some comments, subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much.